because you are paying to have a specific fantasy. It's like a drug, and hopefully we want in hopefully for this session we are hoping that people see, even the one person who can tell someone that human trafficking is really not, we should really stop it and try to at least think about these women, because these women are our daughters, our children, our sisters, etc.
Do you think the challenge is for more education, or the challenge is for more punitive criminal prosecution of the men who engage in those practices? Which one do you think would be more to stem which appears to be a rise in the human trafficking, with particular emphasis on the sex trade?
Okay, well, what I believe, I believe that we have to, we have to educate people. We have to campaign. You have to campaign. And they said that the word of God must be sold to the people, else they will not hear it. So we have to advertise it. The people have to campaign. But with respect to the Caribbean, what we see now in the Caribbean is that most of the resources for human trafficking, most of the governments don't have the resources. They don't have the resources. They don't have the budget. They don't have the only. For example, we are fortunate that the European Union would have sponsored a study, but most governments don't have the resources to conduct any study, to conduct any investigation about human trafficking. So we need more and more resources. The other instance is that crime or incarceration does not deter people, okay? So if you have 10 years in jail, that's okay, okay? What we see from our experience, we did a couple of pilots in Venezuela. What is very important is what is called public shaming, okay? Because most of these people, the guys who use the underage girls, they have family, they have daughters, sometimes older than these women. And what we found was that what we did in Venezuela, when we identified someone who was a trafficker, we got a group of persons comprised of a police officer, a military person, and some social worker to go and talk to the person that this guy just spoke to. Hi, you see this guy? He's a human trafficker. He will sell you. Speak to his parents. Speak to his mother. And we find that is very, very effective. And I think that in combination with other factors, proper law enforcement, could really help reduce the incidence of human trafficking.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, do you think that in the Caribbean, I know you spoke about our lack of resources and how that may affect both educating our young people and the role that the criminal justice system probably would have. But do you think that because of the sort of the state of our economies, that governments in the region are turning a blind eye to this because it brings in tourist dollars into the economy?
Well, I would say yes and yes, because I was, for example, most of the countries in the region do not treat it as a serious business. So, for example, very few countries, maybe Jamaica, I've been involved with the government of Jamaica, takes it very seriously. Antigua is in the process of taking it very seriously. The Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago again, And but for example, in us in Grenada, is it something that we don't really take seriously? For example, most countries in the region have what is called a counter-trafficking unit. There's none in Grenada. Okay, so it's something that we do not take seriously. But however, we need to take the subject seriously because human trafficking is just not about sex trafficking. It's about a wider area. There are 8 areas in human trafficking. So we have to look at it. So the whole idea about a woman, as I said, is exploitation of someone vulnerability. So, for example, a young woman, a woman can create a vulnerable situation for her school or daughter who goes to school by allowing this girl, this child, to have intercourse with a bus driver. In fact, when we were doing the human trafficking study, we had a public sensitization program at the Public Workers Union Center in August 2019. And when we had the forum there, many of the participants spoke about this situation of the issues with bus drivers preying on the children. There are issues with mothers. Giving the bus drivers a free pass with the young daughter, so that she will be allowed to he can then assist their family. So I think that we need more education, and within Grenada especially, we have a culture we have a lot of challenges with domestic abuse, okay, and also the issues with incest. So I mean, it's something that we should really be concerned about in Grenada.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Pierre. And at this point in time, we are going to take a short commercial break. And when we return, we will be getting, I know that we mentioned matters relating to the Caribbean and so, but we will be getting into a specific development that took place just at the end of January that we can share with you, and we are going to be expounding a bit more on the role that certain unsuspecting people play in facilitating the issue of human trafficking. So we take a short commercial break right at this juncture, and we'll be right back with you. We're celebrating the sight, sounds of Grenada, and Grenada is presently in the midst of celebrating its anniversary of independence, its 47th anniversary of independence. And tonight, actually, while we speak here, we have the Independence Calypso competition is ongoing presently. Actually, I was listening to that before I joined you here this evening. And I just want to remind our viewers, our listeners, that you can call us, you can call in on WhatsApp on 647-922-0179. And we were speaking about, the way that some people use their children and so on. We see somebody in the short box is saying that they saw a situation where parents were running a sex business with their very own daughters in their homes. The fathers were collecting the money while the mothers were preparing the girls for the market. And I mean, this is just so crazy. But in any event, Dr. Pierre, you are going to say something on this?
No, well, as I said, that we are fortunate to conduct the CARIFOR human trafficking study in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, we were able to go almost in every country. So we basically went to every country and had a discussion with some of the key stakeholders. And for example, what we see that across the Caribbean, human trafficking is different as we go across the Caribbean. So for example, in Jamaica, you have like two different types of trafficking enterprise. You have what is called the sole proprietor, okay, or human trafficker. As I said, just to understand that you may consider him as a human trafficker, but in his mind, he is not a human trafficker. He is a legitimate businessman. So even though we see all the trappings of human trafficking, they do not consider themselves as human traffickers. In order to talk to them or to speak to them, you cannot mention the term human trafficking, as they just will not deal with you. So I'm saying sole proprietor. Okay. So you see as a sole proprietor. So what this sole proprietor is, he will engage in what is called something called forced begging. He will get a group of guys young children to beg on the streets for him. Or he may get an unsuspecting girl, young woman, to come to do prostitution for him. Okay, so you have that, and then in Jamaica now we have some of their local gangs that are engaged in this whole idea of prostitution, human trafficking, the whole issue of drugs, of gun for drugs for food, the whole issue with Jamaica when they have they will all of the human trafficking activities will be administered through Haiti. Okay, so you go to a place called Clarendon, and there was a specific bay there, and they will transport their information also through drugs also to Haiti. So the gangs, the gangs in Jamaica have very close ties with the gangs in Haiti. So for example, if someone, let's say in Jamaica, I've been interviewed by one of the human trafficking leaders in Haiti, and he told us, for example, if a Jamaican guy may, for example, involved in a shootout with the police, he will get safe haven in Haiti for maybe 6 months, to kind of evade law enforcement, things like that. So human trafficking, the drug smuggling, transnational crimes, they're all connected. Okay, they're all connected. So, for example, in Haiti now, you will have more or less domestic sort of human trafficking, where an aunt or uncle may smuggle his or her daughter or niece. Okay, so we get that, because in fact, the whole issue with crime, in fact, only until 2005, rape was considered a crime in Haiti. Before 2005, rape was not considered a crime in Haiti. So there's all this with sex, and also we realize that the culture of these societies are a little different to us. So, for example, when you move from Haiti now, Haiti is now, then you move to the Dutch and the French Antilles. In fact, in the Dutch Antilles, prostitution is legal there. So if you're a trafficker, your goal is to get to the Dutch Antilles, because prostitution is legal. There are many brothels there. There are people there is a main brothel, which is called Allegro, which is one of the largest brothels there. And there are feeder brothels. There are many feeder brothels all over the French and the Dutch and the French Antilles. And you have people, you have boats, you have people take vacation there, and all in the purpose of having sex. Then you move down to the Martinique and Guadeloupe and the Leeward and the Windward Island into sort of isolated issues of human trafficking. And I think in Grenada there was an instance where some guys from Nepalese guys got trafficked from St. Lucia, and so you have that there. Then when you come to Trinidad now, it's a whole different ball game. So Trinidad with its close connection to Venezuela. So now we see human trafficking on high scale, and maybe hopefully later we can really discuss that. And then what would happen is that from Venezuela now we see that human trafficking is Trinidad is highly organized into a proper, what is called a proper organization chart, a proper organization hierarchy, where the layers are so defined that it's very, very difficult to get a hold of it. And maybe if you read some of my reports on human trafficking, that's how the government of Trinidad and Tobago were able to get involved and to read some of my study and sort of put ways to start cracking down on issues of relating to human trafficking. But the Caribbean is still produces a large amount of victims for human trafficking.
So speaking of Trinidad now, we see that there's an article headlined Gary Griffith, who is the police commissioner in Trinidad, cops involved in human trafficking under watch. And that article is written by Mark Bassant, who is the lead editor from the investigative desk of the Trinidad Guardian. And that article is dated Sunday, January 31st, 2021. And they gave a flashback to April of 2020 when police officers, including the Special Operatives Response Team, they rescued 4 Venezuelan women who were being held captive. But the article here speaks specifically about the involvement of the police. It says human traffickers have provided evidence linking local police who play a critical role, in facilitating the trafficking ring between the country and Venezuela. In one instance, a trafficker has provided a series of correspondence between himself and a cop in TMT. And it goes on to say that the latest information was contained in a CARIFORUM report about human trafficking in the Caribbean and Latin America, where Dr. Justine Pierre, a human trafficking researcher, looks at the involvement of law enforcement in the trade. The research was commissioned with the assistance of CARICOM. And Dr. Pierre sent out potential questionnaires to 342 suspected human traffickers in this region. Analyzing and putting the data together took approximately 9 months and was completed in late 2020. Dr. Pierre, can you tell us a bit more about the involvement, I should say, of the police and so in the protection of human traffickers?
Okay then. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Well, for example, as I mentioned before, our firm work conducted. We were hired by CARICOM. It was a large project sponsored by the European Union to conduct this extensive study into human trafficking. So when we got on the ground, we found out that, especially in Trinidad, there were a lot of issues with human trafficking was everywhere. But we wanted to find out what is really going on. So we, as a research firm, as I said, we have conducted a lot of research. We have one of the largest databases of migrants within the region, skills. So what we did in terms of our methodology, whenever we have a specific methodology that we use, which is a bit different to most other research firms. So what we do, every time we go into a country, the first place we go, the first point of reference is with the church. So what we do, we'll go to the church and explain to the church what we do. In statistics, what we found out that there's something called the ISIC codes and ISCO codes. So that we realize that in the church has the largest cross-section of the population. So the church contains people from all different walks of life. The managers, everyone goes to the church. And also, when you go into when you look at the church and you go into the marginalized community, you even get even a better cross section. So what we did is that we went to the church and we told the church ahead, look what we're doing. We are conducting this study. We want to speak to any group or any organization that so when we got the opportunity to speak to them, then we got in contact with a woman. She said that she was once a prostitute, but now she gave her life over to the Lord. But we asked her, do you know of any person who is still in that trade? So what we ended up, she was able to give us some information. We followed that lead, and then we started to incentivize some of these prostitutes or sex workers So eventually, we had about 19 of them. That's how we started in terms of getting the actual